It's the MMA parlay, MMA parlay. 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 I'm dominating bookies, nom they cookies. I'm dominating bookies, nom they cookies. I'm dominating bookies, nom they cookies. It's the MMA parlay, MMA parlay. King and fighting guru.
Hello MMA community, YouTubers, my following, and everybody who's trying to make some money off of UFC's event coming up on the April 10th. We got the VETTORI and short notice replacement Marvin Vettori versus Kevin Holland. Big Mouth is back. Too soon for my liking, if you ask me, man. That guy, I don't know if it's I think it's a mixture, not even a betting aspect, but a fan. This is all three. If you're a fan of the sport, if you're a fighter, if you're a bettor and you bet money on him, we will all agree, all three of these people, that this guy is an embarrassment to the sport. He just... Look, man, I don't care what anybody tells me, and I don't care what you guys are going to say. This guy, I don't know if he had some action. And, you know, you can never be sure how a fight can go. I don't care how convinced you are and how confident you are, but this is a guy who, through interviews, I've come to learn about him, that he's not as confident in his abilities. Like, he says stuff like, if I lose, it's okay, because he's just a... what's it called? I'll still get a title shot after a couple of more wins. Like, after getting to hear him talk in interviews, you could tell that Kevin Holland is not very confident type of a guy. He thinks, you know, he's good, don't get me wrong, but he doesn't think he's great enough to be able to convince himself even that he's going to guarantee a victory. So if you ask me, a guy who specializes in he requests specifically to only take fights that are short notice replacement fights, because those are the only fights that, if you're not renegotiating a contract, unless you want to get paid the amount that's per your contractual agreement with the company, the only way they'll ever pay you more than your contract is if you do a short notice replacement fight. Ask Jorge Masvidal why he took the fight with Usman all of a sudden. It was just because of more money. So he's made a living off of just taking replacement fights. And a guy who would be willing to not have a full camp, who takes away his ability to train fully, be fully prepared. You've seen how he gassed out, almost lost the Darren Stewart fight because he didn't have enough cardio. It almost cost him the fight. It could have been a 10-8 round and he would have lost. He got lucky the judges gave it to him. He even said at the end of the fight, that guy won. I shouldn't have won that fight. He said that to the president, Dana White, if you remember. He keeps doing that to himself time and time again. You know why? He doesn't care about his legacy. He doesn't care about his livelihood, his reputation, his credibility, his rankings. He even said, I don't care about being the champ. He just wants to get paid. A guy who only cares about money and an extra $20,000 on top of his purse to risk even getting a win and risk your credibility, your durability. You know what that tells me? That's the same kind of guy that'll say, hey, my neighbor, hey, Joe Schmo from across the street, or hey, my girlfriend or my best friend, here's $100,000. Put it on my opponent. Chael Sonnen's done this before. He wouldn't be the first guy. He wouldn't be the last guy. The way he fought, the way he even talked, the way he was all in tight. Like, it's one thing you do it one round because you know you can win, but you don't do it while you're losing and never change up. He even did something that the commentators said in the middle of the fight. I don't know why. He knows that he's down 4 rounds and he needs a finish. Why would he attempt a takedown? He wanted to take his opponent down in the 5th round, knowing his only chance of winning would be a finish. That's one thing. There was like 3 other things that led me to believe. He even pulled Brunson over him at one point in the earlier rounds so he can get taken down. 1st round, he tripped. Now, come on. Then he's talking while he's losing control time in the middle of the fight, he's talking with one of the people outside the ring, making jokes. All right, man. That's just one too many things, guys. I wasn't born yesterday. I know that people are scammers out there. I know, and a guy who cares about $20,000 and doesn't care about winning. Don't tell me he's not a guy who would put money against himself to lose by decision. The Brunson decision prop was paying so much plus money. You put $10,000 on the thing, you're gonna buy a house tomorrow. So I know what he did. I'll never bet money on that guy again. So. He had the capabilities. You saw when he tried until he stopped. That guy, if he tried 100% in his full capabilities, this would have been not even a close fight. He would have taken Brunson out in the second round, at maybe the first. Every time he had him in trouble, he pulled back. He gave him a chance to hug him, and he even he made him fall on top of him. He's never fought that bad. He fought worse than he fights when he's gassed out before he got gassed out. It doesn't make sense. So this guy's a disgrace to the sport, disgrace to humanity, and anything unimaginable. I'm disgusted with this guy. Anyway, but before we talk about that fight, I'm going to give you guys a fade of the week, my fade of the week, and my underdog of the week on this episode. All right, my underdog of the week, we're going to start with is a guy you guys will probably have a bad sour taste in your mouth from the last time you saw him as well, but I can explain that one for you, and it's a little bit more sincere than you would give a Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland cheated. He cheated himself, he cheated the fans, he cheated the sport, he cheated the bettors, he cheated everybody, the company, everybody. And Dana White's excuse, as if he wasn't smart enough to realize this, he's going to say that he had a mental breakdown. If Dana White believed he had a mental breakdown, that was his excuse. He had a mental breakdown. Why would you book him for a fight a month later? Why would you book him for a fight a week later? Because they had this guy already in the talks of getting another fight right away. A replacement fight over that extra $20,000. Look how important it is. You're going against a killer like VETTORI, one of the guys who could be a future champion after losing to a gatekeeper, and you don't want a full camp. You don't think you're going to need a full camp. You're going in there. He's not even fighting in the right weight class. That shows, because he knows he can't cut enough weight. He's content with fighting in the wrong weight class just to get that extra purse. Get this guy out of the sport, man. We don't want a guy like this in the sport. Put him in Bellator. He's too good. Bellator is too good for him. Anyway, all right. My underdog of the week, Yorgan De Castro, especially a minus 300. I would recommend putting as much money. Every time I make a video, every time I make a post, I feel like the lines are moving in front of my eyes. And I know I've seen emails from patrons that say, "Hey, I put 100,000, I put 30,000, I put 20,000 on this guy." That's just one guy. I don't know. I recommend you put as much money on Yorgan De Castro as possible. Let me start off by telling you this. His last performance, I know it looked terrible. Before the fight even started, I was hearing rumors, but when the fight immediately started, I was convinced he was injured. This guy had one of those problems like we saw it with that guy. He tore his ACL in the middle of the fight, and he was winning the fight. He was dominating the fight until his ACL got torn when his opponent pulled a jumping guard. Man, he was an underdog as well, and he was dominating. Anyways, I got to get back to you guys on that. But he got hurt, man. This guy was injured. Going into the fight, he got even more hurt, and that's why he was trying to hold his opponent against the cage, and the referee wasn't having it. He kept pulling them off, which was a little bit too soon, if you ask me. He shouldn't have pulled them off so quickly. He didn't give him a chance because he was working from the clinch. Anyway, so you can't count that last performance against Yorgan De Castro because he was not fully healed from his injuries, and he even had to do surgery, and that's why he's been gone for some time. So, but now he seems not only to be in good shape, he actually looks better than ever. But he's also renewing his contract. And we've seen underdogs like Clay Guida. We've seen Lauren Murphy get her first submission of her career because she was renewing her contract. She knew that she needed some negotiating power and something to bargain on the table with, so she had to do something impressive. We saw a girl who in her entire career, in her late 30s, never had a finish by submission, get a submission finish. So that shows when people are motivated, when they're fighting for their jobs, when you got their backs against the wall in the corner, they'll do things that are amazing and they'll fascinate you. Well, that's what I'm expecting from my good friend here. What's his name? Yorgan De Castro. Yorgan De Castro, which I did bet against because of those rumors. I had him even a hedge in case, because I know he's the better fighter than Felipe. So this was one of those circumstances where, you know, the better fighters got outside the ring circumstances that could affect them. So I had this one hedged. It was the only fight of the entire card that I had hedged, and I was glad for it because I know Felipe is not a better fighter. Just like he lost against Justin Tafa, but they got robbed. But this guy's even better than Tafa in a sense. So he's actually U.S. kid. He's got kicks. His kicks, which, by the way, if you pay attention, it's his mostly biggest path to victory. He wins fights using his kicks. He didn't even throw more than 1 or 2 kicks the entire fight. So you're taking a guy who his main bread and butter, his main go-to weapons, and you're taking, it's pretty much, if you're a right-handed fighter, you tied his right hand behind his back and said, now go ahead and fight. He's half the fighter he is, maybe even less. So we can't fault him for what happened. He couldn't do it. He was injured. So now we got him at great value because nobody knows that. This is, unless you're paying attention to interviews or you're following his personal life, you think that's just the way he performed. So that value is why he's at plus 300. 3-1 underdog. 100 wins you $300. And the guy he's fighting is very low level. This is a guy who has losses to guys who are not even in the UFC. And they've actually made him look pretty bad. And the only guys he has, the guys that he should have dominated and controlled and beat up badly, are guys that he lost against. The guys that he beat up and won against, he did it barely. He didn't do it in impressive fashion. And those were guys that like had losing records. Terrible, like not even less than 500 fighters, 0.500 fighters. So this guy's just really bad, man. I don't see anything, no evidence, no tape studies that shows he's threatening in any way besides power. But Joe Schmo from the bar has power. Anybody got power. If it was all it took to beat a UFC caliber fighter, UFC would never be in the place it is right now. UFC is in the toppest peak of the sports. It's one of the biggest, best sports in the world because of their skilled, talent fighters. They're not even Bellator. They're better than Bellator level fighters in a sense because they're just they don't keep people around who are not impressive. If you're not giving, look what they did to Overeem and RDA, which Bellator's been showing interest in. They said that they want to sign Overeem and Junior Dos Santos. So there's a reason why UFC's very picky. It's that girl who doesn't want to go on a date with the guy because he's got something stuck in his tooth, but he's got a PhD. He's got a great family, a good job, but he got something stuck on his teeth. So she's like, nope, I'll go to the next guy. That's UFC. They're that very picky girl. All right, and Bellator, I love Bellator. I'm not saying anything wrong about them. I love Bellator as a sport, as an organization. I like Scott Coker. I like the fighters. They're just different. They don't mind keeping some mid-level, lower level because those guys give exciting fights. Sometimes more exciting, and they're about exciting fights. So I like that. In some nights, I prefer to watch a Bellator fight event than just because technically the better fighters are in UFC doesn't mean the more exciting fights or the better fights are in the UFC, because Bellator does have some better fights most of the time actually. All right, guys. Anyway, but the guy he's fighting is so low level. This guy's got sloppy techniques. He takes people down with no technique. He doesn't have like some special judo throws. He's not like some third-degree black belt. He's just a guy who likes to try to tackle you. He's like a low-level wrestler, like a football tackle type of bear hug. Very low. If you know basics 101 of MMA, if you're an evolved MMA guy, you're going to walk through this guy like nothing. He's nowhere near like top 20 even material. Why he's such a big favorite is probably because of Jorgen's poor performance against the guy who any real fighter knows Carlos Felipe is a fade. And he got dominated by a fade because he was injured that day. And nobody knows that. So we'll take advantage of this unknown variable. And we're going to take him at plus 300. That's a great single bet. You don't even have to parlay it. I know I may entertain the idea of putting him in a couple of parlays. But these heavyweight fights, they're not good for parlays. Women's MMA and heavyweight fights, and guys who've been gone for too long or just come, not looking too good in the weigh-ins. It's like, there's a lot of things. I have rules. I have a lot of rules in my system, and I follow them all. According to my rules, I learned the hard way. these are not the type of fights you want to parlay too heavy. You can put him in a couple of 2-leggers, but don't make him the guy who messes up your great 8-leg parlay that was going to cash in, unless you want to hedge it. But I don't like his opponent at all, and I would be very surprised to see him look impressive. It would be the first time I've ever seen him look impressive. Can it be possible? I'm sure, but I've never seen him, and until I have evidence in my tape studies and research of something, I gotta assume it's not there, right? Or else I'm imagining or convincing myself of something that there's no facts to lead me to believe, which is not smart. So all we do is smart bets here. The guy who should be the rightful favorite, the guy with the more threats, the arsenal, the experience, the better talent, is the black belt in Yorgan De Castro, who's a true black belt. And he does have a good ground game, so I'm not even worried if the guy tries to take him to the ground. I wouldn't be worried about him at all anyways. He's actually got the advantage on the ground as well. Besides trying to bully him, and he's not even good at that. He doesn't even good enough cardio. And when you'll notice, he can get away with this at the lower level. It's forgivable. But when he's being offensive, his defense is none. He's got zero defense, zero takedown accuracy. He's just terrible every aspect of your game. And when he's throwing strikes, he leaves himself open. I wouldn't be surprised if this guy gets put away in the distance, inside the distance. The guys in the upper echelon, the higher ranked guys, would put this guy away inside 1 minute of the first round. He's got so many holes in his game. Jorgen's just a way better fighter, guys. So there you go. And my fade of the week is none other than a guy who has not won a decision since 2016. It was the last time he ever won a fight that got outside the first round. None other than Jim Miller. Jim Miller is a guy who's on the way out the door, man. This guy should have probably already been out the door. And he's only winning against guys who are also low level, so nothing impressive to run home and brag to mom about. But I love him. You know, he's one of those guys that just the organization loves him, so they'll be happy to keep him around. And you know, he's got that household name value, the UFC name, that just takes him into the betting people. They love this guy. I don't know what it is about. I think it's the names. The name value is in itself enough to put some money on him, I guess. And we all remember him. Like any trainer, I'll tell you now, okay, most 80% of your fighters, they don't watch fight tapes. They let their trainers, their coaches do this fight tape study for them and then devise a plan and give them. They trust while they're wasting time on training and building themselves up, they leave it to the other guys to do the mental and take the time and consume their days in studying the mental aspect. Some fighters are different, but like the JP Buys, the Gavin Tuckers, the Cyril Gain even said it in his interview and most recent interviews, that he doesn't look at tape studies. So that a lot of coaches do that for their fighters, most of them actually. And so when they're doing that, they're not going to study a tape of a guy who lost inside the first round, gassed out in one round and lost. They're going to give you the game plan to beat the guy who, when he was in his prime and like won a 5-round war back and forth and prevailed, they're going to give you a game plan to beat him at his best. They're going to look at his best fight, and we all know at this age, at this point, he's not his best, but they're not going to be foolish enough not to be prepared for it. So they're going to have a guy who's look at Joe Selecki as a guy like when you see a puzzle or a drawing, a painting, okay, and when they just get started, all you see is like a few lines, some shapes, but you couldn't even imagine what it was going to be like, right? Like if you do a before and after, and then you say, no way, whatever that thing is was not going to turn into that thing, right? Or like when you see a caterpillar before it becomes a butterfly, you could never imagine that's what it used to be. That's Joe Selecki. He's coming into his own right now. He's at the peak of his career. He's finally developed everything. While you're still evolving and developing your game skills, you're becoming your complete fighter. Before you get there, you're gonna have so many holes in your game that are unforgivable at the UFC level. And let me remind you, this is a guy who's still undefeated in the UFC. This is a guy, everybody besides myself, I made a killing off of him in his fight against Austin Hubbard. But if you go back to all those other channels, those other handicappers, they all put money against Joe Selecki. They said that a guy like Hubbard, who had been fighting against the best grapplers in the world, and he went all 3 rounds and all 5 rounds with some of the best grapplers that are primarily grapplers, and that this guy choked him out in 1 minute of the first round. There's levels to this, and this guy's people don't even notice because it's not even on his record. If you go to his amateur regional scene, he started his professional career with 3-0, all 3 by first round submission finishes. His first 6 fights never made it out of the first round. He finished them all by submission in the first round. So this is a guy who's always had potential. He's always showed signs of greatness. And now he's at the prime, 27, 28. Let me see. What is he? 27 years old, man. This is at the peak of his prime. This is when, and he looks in the best shape of his life. He's very smart. This is not a Kevin Holland who doesn't care about his career. He takes the necessary time. He gets full camps in. He respects his opponents. He respects the game. And he takes care of his career and his reputation. So he's got a good sense of urgency. He knows when his opponents are in trouble. He knows when to pounce on them. I'm very high on him. I'm very impressed with him. He's already got 3 wins in the UFC. One was Dana White Contender Series, but he also did the very impressive first round finish. The other one was his last first round. It was another first round finish against Austin Hubbard. The one before that was Matt Wyman. Who's a guy who's, if you don't put him away early, he can be a problem for you in the decisions. He's a guy who he's good at winning decisions, but he got dominated. He won his decision. His decision was unanimous. He beat him unanimously, if I'm not mistaken. So it wasn't a split decision or anything. So he never really lost the round. Since he's been in UFC, he's never lost the round. So I have no reason to think that Jim Miller, at this stage of his career, and the only guy who beat him even before entering into UFC, but let me remind you, this was years ago. He was still a caterpillar. Are guys who have only losses to like Michael Chandler's and like some of the best of the best. They're very good high-level guys who are still doing good in their careers. Let me see if I remember who they are. Oh yeah, look at that guy. One of the guys, Nicholas Mota. He was a guy who, if you remember, he went in Dana White Contender Series against Joe Laurie. Joe Laurie is a tough guy. That's the kind of guy, if you remember my breakdowns, I told you if you're ever in a bar fight, you want to take a guy like Joe Laurie with you. If you look back at my Dana White Contender, we went 5-0 that day. We got perfect picks, not one wrong pick. And that was the day I told you Joseph Laurie, even though he may not be the more skilled fighter or the better fighter, he's the kind of guy you want to take with you to a bar fight. He doesn't back down. You can throw the kitchen sink at him and he'll keep coming forward. That's the guy who Nicholas Mota beat. So there's no shame. This guy, Nicholas Mota, look, he's on a 3-fight win streak right now. And he won 5 out of his last 6. Before that, he was on he beat guys like Eliel Dos Santos. So he's a pretty impressive fighter. There's no shame in that. And again, this was before his coming into his own. All right, guys, so we'll talk. There's a lot of segments. I'm going to do a lot of short segments in my Patreon. You will get the full breakdown, the full predictions. We're also doing it for Bellator. As you saw in Bellator, we had perfect picks. We got the underdog right. We bet against Lara that Watanabe was going to use her judo and her power advantage to control her and win the fight. So we won the over 2.5 rounds, was in a parlay. We cashed 2 5-leg parlays, a 4-leg parlay, a few more 4-leg parlays. We cashed all of our prop bets, 100% on the prop bets. We only missed 2 small 2-leg parlays. Every other parlay, 20 of them we made, all hit besides 2 of them. And then we missed 1 single bet, which was Neiman Gracie, which in my opinion, the guy landed 77 strikes to 30. He had more control time. He was the one with the aggression, the more damage. The fight almost even got stopped. Every way possible and everywhere. Head, body, kicks. There was not one field he lost. There was not one round. Besides, maybe you can argue at the end of the last round, you could possibly give him the third. You could have given Jackson the 3rd round. Even the unofficial judges, if the commentators, you remember what they were saying, that the unofficial judges, including the commentators themselves, the referee, that guy, I forgot his name, that's commentator, and myself, who I keep track of this, we all gave the fight 29-28 to Neiman. Neiman was even celebrating. He was already talking about what he was going to do, and he was telling the president, hey, I want this guy next. He was already celebrating. He thought he did enough. Everybody, actually, the exact words where the commentator said, there's no way this guy is now walking out with the win. Because they did the numbers. It was more than double. He did more than twice the work that he needed to do to get the win. But I'll tell you why he didn't win. This was a night where more favorites than underdogs were prevailing, and the underdogs that did prevail were against guys who most people were going to be worried about. So in Vegas, like the turnaround, if he had won, and if you remember, he started as a big underdog. This is what you got to keep an eye for. This is one of those things that takes more than a betting. It takes a betting expert as well to know these things, not just an MMA expert. If you noticed, the reason why he was in only 2 parlays for us, my full bet slips, they're public right now. You can see them. Out of 20 parlays, I was very confident in this guy. He was one of my more confident picks. As you saw, he dominated. He won the majority of the fight, especially knowing that he went to King's MMA and he's training with guys like RDA. He's training with guys like Beneil Dariush, Martin Vettori, under the genius mind of Rafael Cordero. I was very confident in this guy. And Jackson is a guy who owns businesses. His one foot is already out the door. He talks about his, he's a self-employed small business owner, and this guy is all in the game. He's all about fighting. He's a Gracie prodigy. He's a Gracie himself. So he's got Gracie's on this corner. He's got Kader. So I knew he was going to win the fight, which he did. But I knew that when I noticed, because I make my bet slips after weigh-ins observations, I noticed that the turnaround, somebody put so much money, or so many people put so much money on Gracie, they turned him from a plus 200 underdog to a big, moderate-sized favorite. That means they would have had to pay out more money on Gracie than any other fighter in the entire card. So it made so much sense that if there was ever going to be a robbery, this was the fight. No other fighter had more money come in on them as much as Gracie. There was more money on Vegas's pockets that they would have to pay out, and they were holding on to pay out. If Gracie won, the difference for Vegas would have been so gigantic that it didn't surprise me that they did that to him. I even saw it coming, to be quite frank. No, outside of a finish, he would have, because Bellator is a smaller organization, guys. They don't have as many eyes on them, so they don't feel as pressured to do the right thing when they need to. So they rather just fall underneath the guideline. You know, keep those guys who really the guys who really control the world. The real bosses, the politicians, even are the guys who they control the show. So the guys like Dana White's guy, they're just puppets. These are the fallback guys. So anyway, that's a story for another day. But yeah, we did great, man. Even regardless of the robbery, we only got 2 parlays that were 2-leggers wrong. We made a killing. We made like 10 times our money back. We made 18 or 17 out of 20 of our parlays cashed in. 5 out of 6 of our single bets, our prop bet, everything cashed in. We only got Neiman Marcus. Every other fight was right. And now I do this every card. If you notice, I predicted that before the fights even started. I said, I guarantee you I'm not getting more than 1 wrong, if I even get any wrong. And that's because I do that every one of my patrons parlay the entire card. You know what they do? They take 10 picks, parlay it. Then they'll take the riskiest one out. They'll make 9 parlays. Then they'll take the riskiest 2 out. They'll make an 8-leg parlay. And then some nights you'll notice maybe one didn't cash in, but the rest did. So you have an 8-leg, a 7-leg, a 6-leg. As long as I keep being consistent, and I've always been with my accuracy, you can count on all of those parlays cashing in. And if even 40% of them cash in, you'll be making profit. So imagine when you get all of them, plus my bet slips, my single bets, my prop bets. My prop bets are not like winning tickets. They're not like simple as 50-50, yes or no, winning or losing. There's like 20 different outcomes. Like for me to get Griffin to knock out Saudi Yadong inside the distance in the first round, TKO prop by plus 600. That's like one of 20 different outcomes. And for me to go 10-0, not even get 1 wrong, every fight I gave you the most I even said it, these are the most likely outcomes on all of these fights. If you have any questions about why or where I got these outcomes, the knockouts, the decision props, the everything, you can ask me and I'll explain it to you, because I did them all for good reason. I envisioned the way my fight IQ, my knowledge, can allow me to vision the fights and see what would happen more likely than not, more often than not. That's why my accuracy is above 95%. I've even gone 100% on. I've gone more occasions 100% than I've gone 90%. So I would assume it's more than 90%. My worst day ever was actually 85%, but that was one time only. And that was a day where I gave 16 props, 13 of them cashed in. All right, guys, thank you for your time. If you want, this is the best time because I'm raising the rates on the Patreon soon. So if you want to get grandfathered in, this is the best time. The month is still early. It's only the 5th of the month. We got 9 more events because I don't just do Bellator. I don't just do UFC. I do all the other sports, MMA and outside MMA. And if you see my track record for NHL, baseball, football, basketball, it's even better. It's as good, if not better. All right, thank you guys for your time. Appreciate everything. So we'll do a recap. We got Joe Selecki winning against my fade of the week, Miller. We've got underdog of the week, Jorgen De Castro, beating a guy who I think is a fade until he shows me otherwise. We haven't seen anything from him to make us believe he's worth plus, what is he right now? Plus 250. So that's ridiculous. And he didn't even the odd makers didn't give him that much. Somebody's putting too much leeway on, they're buying too much into his Jorgen De Castro's last performance because they're not hardcore fans. So they didn't understand that was the worst performance of Jorgen De Castro's life he's ever given us, and that's because of an injury. Look at, if you don't believe me, look at his interviews. I watch interviews. So he even told you what kind of injury he had. He explained it. So and now he's renewing his contract. So we're gonna see the best version. This guy's leg kicks are some of the best. It takes 2-3 leg kicks. Ask Felipe. Look at Felipe's post-fight interview. Carlos Felipe said, after one leg kick, I thought I was done with. If he had given me a couple of more of those, I was finished. I saw it. He gave him one leg kick, but he was hurt. He couldn't do anymore. The fight almost came to an end. Imagine if he did like 7 of those on a guy like this guy. He's not a good fighter. He's not accustomed to high-level MMA fights. He probably won't even know how to check him properly. If Conor McGregor didn't know how to check properly, I don't think this guy will. So count on him to probably not come through. They're trying to pull the wool over your eyes. Don't fall for it. Knowing my luck, this fight will somehow get canceled. That's what always happens when I find you guys good underdogs. All right, guys. So you got that one. I gave you my caution about Kevin Holland. Stay away from betting on that guy. I don't trust him anymore. And so yeah, Jim Miller, fade of the week. So we're betting on Selecki. Jorgen De Castro is underdog of the week, and caution to stay away from Kevin Holland's cheating big mouth ass. So all right, guys, thank you. Please hit the likes, hit the reminders, hit the subscribe button if you haven't, but more importantly, leave a comment or the Fighting Guru's coming after you. I like that, Fighting Guru coming after you. All right, guys, thank you for your time. Have a blessed day. Happy Easter to you and your families. Talk to you all soon.